In this video, I'm going to talk about Katijah Terong, who wrote a manuscript in the early 20th century about love magic, erotic spells, and sexual techniques. The name of her manuscript is Perhimpunan Gunawan bagi Laki-laki dan Perempuan. It's quite an exceptional case of a Malay female author from the early 20th century. Khadijah was born on Penyengat Island, which falls within the Riau Lingga archipelago. She was born in 1885, and she was the fourth wife of Raja Haji Abdullah, who was a writer, a judge, and a Qadi, or an Islamic judge. Her second name, Terung, was an nickname given by her husband to refer to her fair and luminous complexion. Terung means brinjal, and brinjal, there's the black or dark purple kind, and then there's the white or cream colored kind, and it has a smooth and glossy exterior. So her work was seen as quite remarkable because she wrote about sex and the body with a very frank and open way. In her work, sexuality was seen as intertwined with Islamic spirituality. So, this is a picture of the real manuscript. It is stated to be written in 1911. It's written in the Jawi script, and it can be translated, or some scholars have translated as a compendium of charms for men and women. But it can also be translated as perfecting sexual congress for men and women. The text is addressed only to women, and it has 96 pages written in two parts in a notebook, and it's currently in the care of Raja Hamzah Yunus on Penyengat Island. You can access it in digital form under the British Library's Endangered Archives project. The first half of the manuscript is more legible, and it's written in a consistent handwriting, and it contains 53 spells or charms for sexual satisfaction, beauty, love, influence, and healing. And unfortunately, the second part is illegible because of paper and ink degradation. So Khadijah was part of an elite noble family on Penyengat Island. We can see that her manuscript contains Islamic knowledge, some Arabic verses. The spells mix together verses from the Quran, Arabic, and Malay phrases. So, not all her spells are from Islamic religious texts, but probably knowledge that is passed on through an informal system of apprenticeship, because in her text she mentions that she learned some knowledge from someone named Wan Mah from Penang. Some spells also sound like very long and intricate jampi or incantations, which were collected by Skeet in his book Malay Magic. I'll show a picture of the book later. But other than that, her manuscript seems to be a really original work compared to other texts that dealt with body and sexuality at the time, such as the Kitab Jimat. Because her text contains very explicit and sometimes outlandish descriptions of sexual techniques and sexual organs, previous scholars may not have delved too deeply in it. Research has shown mostly about what we can know about her social status or personal life, corroborating this information with what is known about the historical context of Riau Lingga in the late 19th century. So, in my book, co-authored with Masna Muhammad, chapter 5 is all about Katijah Terong. So you can already order the book now on Amazon. For more context, you can read this book, Victorious Wives by Mulaika Hijaz. And this is a picture of the foundation, Yayasan Kebudayaan Indra Sakti on Penyengat Island, which I visited together with Masna in 2024. And that is the current caretaker, Raja Hamzah Yunus, on the left. These are the ruins of the home of her husband, which also, if I read correctly, served as the Sharia court. And around this complex, there are four houses. And since she was the fourth wife, she lived in one of these houses. But the houses are all now demolished. You can go into the jungle around this building, and you can see foundations of the four houses. Raja Abdullah was a writer, and he was a grandson of Raja Ali Haji, And Raja Ali Haji is one of the figures of the noble family, with many female family members who were well-known writers. In Mulaika Hijaz's book, she wrote about these well-educated elite women in Riau who wrote texts like Syair. Syair is a long-form poetry, narrative poetry, with a popular theme of a disguised heroine. The literature was seen as whimsical or frivolous, but maybe the theme of disguised heroine was a way of portraying women in a society where gender relations were asymmetrical, and the only way for a woman to achieve something is to act like a man or disguise herself as a man. So even though there was this tradition of writing by women, with many female literary role models in Riau, Katijah's manuscript is still highly unusual because not just because of its female authorship, but and not because of its focus on a female audience, but because of its focus on magic and divination, which is usually written by men. So we don't really know about her genealogy. We know that her first marriage was to a barber. She was a commoner. She first worked as a household servant for the third wife of her husband, and then she became his fourth wife in 1908. She did not have any children, and when she was old, because her relatives were far away, she was cared for by Raja Fatima, who is the daughter of her husband's third wife. So her marriage to Raja Haji Abdullah increased her social standing, as can be seen by how the community reacted to her. She was invited to almost every wedding to not only enliven the occasion, but to ensure that the ceremonies proceeded smoothly. So she would use amulets, talismans, spells, charms to prevent the wedding couple from being disturbed by any supernatural beings. And just like other healers, she was both feared and respected because it was documented that they feared that if she was not invited to their wedding, there would be negative consequences. In this picture, Katijah is seated on the floor, left to the bride and the groom, and she played the role of, we call it Ma'andam, which is like a ritual specialist for the bride, the beautician, and also a chaperone. And most likely, she was also a bomo or a healer in her community. In her manuscript, she signs off by saying that she was constantly in sadness and depression, senantiasalah di dalam duka cita dan murung. So we will see later in the spells. I'll do separate videos on her spells. We can see that the spells show that a concern with wanting her husband close to her, physically and emotionally. Her spells talk about how a woman can express her intentions and her desires, and how to make the husband submit to her, desire her, make her as a wife beautiful in his eyes. But the Malay style of writing, it's a literary device to self-efface, to bring yourself lower than you actually are. So maybe this closing text is not as a true reflection of her feelings. So we don't really know when she started practicing magic. Perhaps it could have been before or after her marriage to her husband. But her husband himself also is skilled at the arts of the occult. He apparently owned a skull that could talk, a pen that could write by itself, and he also had this box that we saw on Penyengat Island. So previously we had never read anything about this box. It's only seen on Penyengat by when we went to see the manuscripts. So the caretaker asked us if we wanted to look at it, and we had no idea what it was until we were there. So it's a small box, like maybe A5 size. You can see it's quite thick. So on the cover, this is on the inside of the cover. The image on the right is the inside of the cover, and it is an erotic image. He most likely obtained this image from erotic magazines in Europe when he traveled there. It was around the time he did his pilgrimage, I think. So then he also went to Europe and he managed to obtain these erotic magazines. And the inside of the box, so I have blurred it because obviously this is going on YouTube and I cannot put such images, but I will describe them to you. So you see when you open the box, right, there's sort of like a 3D diorama inside. On one side of the box, there is a 3D reproduction of the female genitalia. And I guess it's meant to be realistic because there's hair and there's, you can see labia, clitoral hood. But in my opinion, it just looks a little too big to be life size. And then on the right side, so when you flip the box over, there's another 3D diorama. On the right side is a sculpture of an erect penis penetrating the vagina. So We think, this is probably a didactic kind of, it's a learning tool. Um, Perhaps because the husband also, in his works, he also attached erotic pictures from magazines, and he would add modifications to the drawings. And in her book as well, at the back, there are similar images. So the spells in Khadijah's work, there is a feminine touch to the ingredients that she talks about. So things like flowers, lime fruit, earthy substances like chalk or kapur, incense, betel leaves, peppercorns, gambia. These are also spices that are used in the makan sirih ritual. And there's other methods in her work, such as standing in front of the sun, standing under a full moon. So things that are quite easy, I would say, to make. So here there is a one. Okay, I'll just read out one spell because it's also explicit. Um, I'll read it out in Malay and then give the translation. This is one of the spells. Pinang dan sirih dalam tempurung, lengkapkan dengan gambir dan kapur, hangat seperti bara tempurung, kering laksana habu di dapur. Bunga di taman di sebelah taman, bernama Banjaran Sari, sedap dan nyaman, puki berbulu, kelentit menggatal, butuh berduri. Buah bali di dalam cawan pokok. And this part is illegible. Berkat kabul doa, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the first two lines of the charm describe combinations of four ingredients for sirih. So again, a sirih is a sort of a social ritual. So preparation of spices and leaves offered to guests, and they are chewed together as part of Malay social life. So in it, you have pinang, which is the areca or betel nut, a kind of stimulant. Sirih leaf, gambir. It's astringent and reddish in color, and kapur, which is slaked lime, which helps to release alkaloids from the betel nut. So on their own, the ingredients are bitter, but when they chew together, they create a very pleasant and addictive stimulant effect. So this charm is like a combination of poetry, some sensual talk. In other videos, I'll make separate videos about her charms because there's a lot to talk about for one charm. So as I mentioned before, she was likely a Ma'andam. In those days, people didn't just have one role. So if you're Ma'andam, likely, like I said, likely she was also a bomber or a healer. In this case, her kind of magic was love magic. Ma'andam or bomo, if they're women, they might also be bidan or provide abortion care. They might also wash the deceased and also do massage. So there's not a clear delineation of their roles. They might kind of do all these things. So in Malay magic, you have different words. In English, we say magic, but in Malay, there are all these words. Serapa, Paida, Aksam, Sumpah, so on and so forth. You can see on the screen. And here I tried to translate where I could, where it makes sense. But some things, I don't know, like Halimun, I don't know what it means. If you know, you can put it in the comments. Kundang, I'm not sure. So they all have different purposes because they are spells for different intentions. But in English, we have maybe charm, spell, magic to describe all of this. This is the book by Walter W. Skeet, published in 1900. And in his book, he kind of collects everything related to Malay magic. So from pawang, bidan, the book is arranged from birth to death, I believe. So everything surrounding pregnancy and birth, childhood, adolescence, and then sort of general festivals like harvest festivals or mining, coal mining, what kind of rituals you would do at these moments, and then all the way till death. So you can check out their book. I think it's also available online to read more about magic. And this is a more recent book, I think it's 2021 by Farouk Yahya about magic and divination. So you will see most of the things in there are about men, and that's why Katijah Terung is quite an exception. All right, see you in the next video.